For 100 grand a month, I agreed to a sham marriage with a stunning CEO. The rules were simple. Act the part, but don't catch feelings. She, however, decided to go off script, turning our charade into a real-life obsession that culminated in me being held captive in her mansion, a prisoner to her possessive, twisted love. It started subtly. I'd go out for a beer with a friend, and she'd smell a stranger's perfume on my jacket. The next day, I'd find myself locked in her bedroom. She wanted to sever my ties to the outside world, to cage me like a canary in her gilded mansion. For the sake of my freedom, I had to orchestrate an accident, a faked death to escape her clutches. At the funeral, she clutched my portrait, her sobs echoing with a grief so raw it was almost believable. I thought I had finally broken free. But then, during the service, my dad took a call, and as she watched him, her expression shifted. She knew. She sensed the lie. "You're Liam Miller, correct?" The woman's voice was like ice cubes clinking in a glass. Chilly, with no warmth whatsoever. "I've seen you on TV. Impressive." My parents saw it too. They were impressed. She slid a file across the polished surface of the coffee table between us. "This outlines the scope of your employment. Take a look." 3 days ago, I'd received a call from someone claiming to be the executive assistant to the CEO of Ignite Innovations. She said her boss wanted to hire me for a high-paying position. My first instinct was to hang up, assuming it was a scam. But the assistant was remarkably persistent. After her detailed explanation and my own thorough verification, I was stunned to realize the offer was legitimate. And so, here I was, sitting bolt upright in the CEO's penthouse office, face-to-face with the legendary Serafina Vance. I picked up the file labeled job description, expecting to see a management role where a Wharton MBA like me could finally make his mark. But when I flipped to the first page, my brain short-circuited. Position: husband to Serafina Vance. Term: indefinite. Until Ms. Vance finds a genuine spouse, or her parents cease pressuring her to marry. I looked up, my disbelief palpable. A formulaic, almost robotic smile touched Serafina's lips. "We won't be signing a contract. Those things have no real legal teeth. We're going to the courthouse to get a marriage certificate." She leaned forward slightly, and a pleasant but cold designer fragrance wafted over to me. "Your salary is $100,000 a month. Upon our divorce, you'll receive a one-time payment of $2 million. You'll live with me. All daily expenses will be covered by the company. Your salary is pure profit." She paused, her gaze sharp, as if she could see right through me. "And a word of advice. Don't even think about suing for divorce to get a piece of my fortune. I have no personal assets. Everything is held by the company." Her lips curled into a smirk. "Using corporate funds for personal matters. A top business school grad like you understands that, right?" The offer was so ludicrously generous it made my head spin, but it also filled me with a profound sense of humiliation. I'd spent years buried in books, winning countless awards, believing I was one of the brightest minds to come out of Wharton. And this was my value? To be some rich woman's kept man? A trophy husband? Was all my ambition and talent going to be suffocated by a pile of cash before I even had a chance to use it? But reality had already slapped me awake long ago. I've been on the job hunt. Companies would look at my glittering resume, then offer me an internship. The salary? $1,500 a month. In Philadelphia, you could barely survive on that. Next to $100,000 a month, my pride felt pathetic and hollow. I took a deep breath, fighting down the turmoil in my gut, and asked one last, desperate question. "Why me?" "Because you're brilliant enough to have been on television," Serafina answered directly. "And more importantly, my parents saw you on that show. They actually praised you." She seemed to notice my lingering resentment and added, "To be honest, I've tried hiring actors before. 2 of them. I was hoping to fool my family." She sighed. "But my parents know me too well. They know my standards are impossibly high, and they saw right through the man I chose. They said, 'If you won't even get a marriage license, how can it be real?'" She looked at me then, assessing me like a prize commodity. "So this time, I'm choosing you. An emerging business prodigy, a top-tier academic talent. You might lack practical experience, but your resume is flawless. With a marriage certificate, my parents might actually believe it." She pushed another file toward me. "This is a script for how we met, along with a dossier on my personal preferences. Your job is to memorize everything and make your performance convincing. I have faith in your abilities." Hearing her explanation, that pathetic shred of self-respect I was clinging to found a sliver of comfort. So my talent did have some use after all, even if it was just as capital for an acting gig. Everyone has to bow to reality eventually. I nodded, my voice a little hoarse. "I'll do it." "Excellent." Serafina stood up, her movements crisp and efficient. Then let's go to City Hall now. You brought your ID, right? My assistant should have reminded you. I nodded numbly. A few hours later, I was standing on the steps of the courthouse, clutching a freshly printed marriage certificate, still in a daze. I was married, just like that. Be at this address tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock sharp. Serafina handed me a business card with nothing but an address printed on it. It's my townhouse. You're moving in. We need to rehearse. Go home and pack your things. Without another glance, she climbed into a black Bentley and sped away, leaving me in a cloud of exhaust. I clutched the 2 file folders, which felt heavier than all my textbooks combined. One was my job description as a husband. The other was a complete manual on my new wife, Serafina Vance. Her favorite foods, her pet peeves, her hobbies, even her menstrual cycle. I had to have it all memorized. The big test was in 3 days. I was scheduled to meet my new in-laws. If I screwed up, there would be consequences. Her final, icy words echoed in my ears. The 2 file folders in my hand felt heavier than my entire college course load. As I walked back to the university dorm I was still temporarily living in, my head was buzzing. Liam. Hey, Liam. An ecstatic, voice-cracking shout snapped me out of my trance. I looked up to see my childhood friend, Caleb, barreling toward me like a human cannonball, his face alight with pure joy. What's up with you? You look like you won the lottery, I said. I got out, he yelled, punching my chest with surprising force. I'm heading to the West Coast. Some tech giant just offered me $1 million annual salary. I'm done with this East Coast internship bullshit for $1,800 a month. He was so worked up his face was flushed, and he waved his arms around as he ranted. $1,800 a month to do the work of someone making 20 grand. All-nighters, no overtime pay, not even weekend off. Is this a life for a human being? His words were like needles, pricking at a raw nerve. So-called geniuses like us, it turned out, were dirt cheap in the face of reality. I looked at him, and for some reason, the words just slipped out. A talent like you leaving the country. You know how many people are going to call you a sellout? The excitement on Caleb's face cooled slightly, then morphed into a determined sneer. Let them talk. A man's got to eat. My parents aren't loaded like yours were. Your family may have gone bankrupt, but even a broke lion is bigger than a healthy horse. I'm a first-generation college student from a blue-collar family. If I don't hustle my ass off, my folks will be breaking their backs until the day they die. He looked at me. Besides, didn't your dad push you into business school so you could rebuild the family empire? I fell silent. He was right. We were both just bowing to reality in our own ways. He was selling his technical skills. I was selling my marriage. It's fine. Go for it. I support you, I said, clapping him on the shoulder. I'll help keep an eye on your parents for you. You're a real one, man. Caleb punched me again, harder this time. So what about you? Did you get that job at Ignite? My throat fell dry. I avoided his gaze and mumbled, yeah, I got a job. The pay is incredible, but I had to get married. What? Caleb froze for a second, then let out a deafening whoop. Yo, look at you. Bagged yourself a sugar mama. Huh. Nice one, Mr. Wharton. Playing it close to the vest, I see. His booming voice made a few students walking by turn and stare. I wanted to crawl into a hole. I grabbed his arm and dragged him toward the dorms. The next day, I packed my few belongings and took an Uber to the address on the business card. It was a gated community on the main line. After the security guard checked my ID, he respectfully waved me through. The townhouse in front of me was so luxurious it looked like a small palace. I stood at the door, momentarily unable to make my legs move. The door opened. A housekeeper with a blank expression greeted me. Mr. Miller, please come in. Ms. Vance has given instructions. I stepped into the foyer just as Serafina was descending the spiral staircase. She had changed into a sharp, professional skirt suit. Her makeup was flawless, and her eyes were as cold as ever. Your room is on the 2nd floor, next to mine. Your wardrobe has been prepared. Please dispose of your old things. Her words were clipped and devoid of emotion, like she was giving a work directive. I followed her upstairs and pushed open the door to the room next to hers. Inside, a massive walk-in closet was filled with brand-new designer clothes. Everything from casual wear to formal suits, right down to underwear and socks, was neatly arranged, the tags still attached. This meticulously arranged kept-man setup left a bitter taste in my mouth. Remember, she said, standing at the doorway without entering, I have a few admirers, some with powerful families. If they find out about you, it could cause you trouble. Her eyes held a clear warning. Be careful when you go out. Don't cause any problems for me. With that, she turned and walked down the stairs, the sound of her heels clicking on the floor growing more distant. A moment later, I heard a car engine start outside. The enormous, opulent house fell silent, leaving me utterly alone. The quiet was suffocating. I walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the city sprawling below. I felt like a bird trapped in a golden cage. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to calm down. I had 2 days until the final exam with her parents. I went back to the room and spread the contents of the 2 folders across the bed. One was my job description. The other was a dossier on Serafina Vance. I had to burn every last detail into my brain within 48 hours. I picked up the file on her personal information. The densely packed text felt like an invisible net, designed to trap me permanently in the role of Serafina Vance's husband. I read the first line. She hates beans, but enjoys watching other people eat them. What the hell kind of preference was that? My scalp tingled with a sense of dread. 3 days flew by in a blur. On the day we were to meet her parents, I sat in the passenger seat of the Bentley, my palms slick with sweat. Serafina drove, her gaze fixed on the road, her profile as cold and perfect as a marble statue. Nervous? She asked suddenly. A little, I admitted. Remember, you're a Wharton prodigy, not some wide-eyed kid who's never seen the world. Project Confidence. Don't blow this for me. The car turned into a private estate and pulled up in front of a modern, yet classic mansion. A distinguished-looking middle-aged couple stood at the door, presumably her parents. The moment we got out of the car, Serafina's mother fixed her gaze on me, a look so sharp it felt like a physical probe. Serafina, darling, is this? She paused, her tone laced with obvious disbelief. Another actor you've hired? The atmosphere froze. My heart skipped a beat, but before Serafina could speak, I stepped forward. I put on a perfectly calibrated smile, a little shy, but not without confidence. Mr. and Mrs. Vance, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Leah Miller. I then launched into our story, how we met at a business forum, how I'd been smitten at first sight, and how I'd pursued her relentlessly. The story was from her script, but I embellished it with plenty of my own emotional journey, making it sound so real that even I was starting to believe it. Serafina's parents exchanged a look, their skepticism not entirely gone. Well, come inside, her father said. The real test began at the dinner table. A feast was laid out before us, and I instantly spotted the traps. There was a platter of seared scallops, which the dossier said she loved, a side of roasted Brussels sprouts, which she despised, and a lobster bisque, which she couldn't touch due to a shellfish allergy. This is less a family dinner and more a job interview, I thought with a silent, bitter laugh. I acted with flawless ease. First, I placed a scallop on Serafina's plate. You should have some of this. It's your favorite. Then, under the pretext of rearranging the silverware, I subtly moved the Brussels sprouts and the lobster bisque to the far side of the table, out of her reach. Her mother's eyes never left me. As Serafina reached for a bowl of soup, I intercepted it. Careful, it's hot. Let me cool it for you. I blew on it gently a few times before placing it back in front of her. The whole motion was so fluid, it looked like something I'd done 1,000 times. The doubt in her parents' eyes finally began to melt away. Just then, Serafina made her move. She reached her chopsticks across the table and picked up a large shrimp from my plate. My heart clenched, thinking she was about to pull some stunt. Instead, she put on a pair of disposable gloves, methodically peeled the shrimp, and placed the glistening meat in my bowl. You eat too, she said, her voice soft but loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. Don't just worry about me. The mood at the table instantly warmed. Her father started sharing embarrassing stories from Serafina's childhood. This one, she's been timid since she was a little girl. Scared of the dark. We visited relatives in the country once, and she was too afraid to use the outhouse. Ended up wetting the bed. And that time she was chasing the neighbor's puppy, her mother added with a laugh. She fell headfirst into a creek and cried like the world was ending. Don't even get me started on her cooking. Her father chimed in. A total disaster. She tried to use a rice cooker once and forgot to add water. Nearly burned the house down. I chuckled, turning to give Serafina a playful, teasing look. She played her part perfectly, her face turning a fetching shade of pink as she shot me a mock glare of embarrassment and indignation. We looked every bit the part of a young couple in love, being playfully roasted by the family. Back at the townhouse, the warm family atmosphere evaporated. Serafina changed her clothes and sat on the living room sofa, her laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard. The only sound was the relentless tapping, creating a cold, sterile silence. I was about to head upstairs to my room when she spoke, her voice flat, without looking up. Was it funny? I froze, my survival instincts kicking in. I immediately turned, a sycophantic smile plastered on my face. Not at all. I'm way funnier. I mean, my stories are way more embarrassing. She finally looked up, her beautiful eyes betraying no emotion. My parents don't think I can take care of myself. She closed the laptop and stood, walking toward me. So, in light of that, your job description requires an amendment. A knot of dread formed in my stomach. She stopped in front of me, enveloping me in that same cold, designer fragrance. Starting tomorrow, your duties will include one additional task. You'll be in charge of cooking. It wasn't long before Serafina's parents wanted to meet mine. I took her to see my folks first, expecting her to maintain her Ice Queen CEO persona. To my surprise, the moment her car parked in front of my family's modest suburban house, her entire demeanor shifted. Stepping inside, she beamed a smile so sweet you could get a cavity from it. Her voice was like honey. "Mom, Dad, it's so wonderful to meet you. I'm Serafina, your daughter-in-law." My parents, initially a bit reserved, melted at the sound of Mom and Dad. She presented them with thoughtfully chosen gifts, poured them tea, and even tried to follow my mom into the kitchen to help out. Her performance as the perfect, dutiful daughter-in-law was so convincing it left me speechless. My parents were utterly charmed, holding her hands and asking her a million questions as if she were their own. Soon, the day came for both sets of parents to meet officially. We booked a private room at a high-end restaurant, and the atmosphere was surprisingly warm. My dad and my new ersatz father-in-law hit it off immediately, and our mothers were chatting away like old friends. After a few drinks, my dad, clearly a little buzzed, slapped his thigh and boomed at me. "Look at you, son. You really hit the jackpot, landing a catch like this, a family like this." Even when my business was at its peak, I couldn't compare. He wasn't done. "Looks like that $1 million I set aside for you as startup capital won't be necessary now." A bomb went off in my head. $1 million? Since when did my dad have that kind of money? Wasn't he broke? I stared at him, but he was too busy basking in his own glory to notice the grenade he just lobbed onto the table. Serafina's parents, however, looked pleased. Her father chuckled, smoothing things over. Like father, like son, Liam is an exceptional young man. It's only natural he comes from good stock. My dad and Serafina's father were now best friends, jumping from vintage wines to classic cars, from chess to deep-sea fishing. My mom and her mom were practically sisters, arms linked, discussing recipes and knitting patterns. The mood was so festive you'd think we were a multi-generational dynasty, not two people in a contract marriage. Then, things took a terrifying turn. The two mothers, deep in conversation, strayed into dangerous territory. "You know," my mom began excitedly, "seeing how well they get along, shouldn't we start planning the wedding celebration? Get things moving so we can have some grandkids to spoil." Serafina's mother nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, yes, we need to light a fire under them." Serafina and I sat there, paralyzed, feeling like we were on death row. This was great. Not only was the fake marriage becoming real, but they were already planning the next generation. After that dinner, our lives changed completely. The four parents acted as if they'd installed surveillance cameras in the townhouse. We were forced to play the role of a doting couple 24/7. In the living room, I had to feed her pieces of fruit. When we left the house, her arm had to be linked through mine. We couldn't even speak to each other in a neutral tone, terrified of revealing the charade. One evening, after the parental units had finally departed, I breathed a sigh of relief. I was starving. I snuck into the kitchen, where the fridge was stocked with top-shelf ingredients. I quickly whipped up a bowl of fragrant fried rice and seared some steak with onions. I had just sat down and taken 2 bites when I felt a familiar, cold fragrance behind me. Serafina, dressed in a silk robe, was standing right there. Without a word, she reached over, took my bowl of rice and a plate of steak, and sat down at the table. She picked up a fork. "I'm hungry, too," she said, her eyes meeting mine with an unspoken command. "This is mine now. Go make yourself another one." After she commandeered my fried rice that night, my job description officially changed. It was like a switch had been flipped in her brain, and she began to treat me as her personal chef without a shred of guilt. At first, it was just text messages when she was working late, ordering me to prepare a midnight snack. Then, she started coming home for dinner. She'd call on her way from the office, rattling off her menu requests with the same icy tone she used to command her subordinates. "I want sweet and sour ribs tonight, and a chicken soup. I'll be home in 30 minutes. Dinner had better be on the table." I was screwed. I had officially been demoted from contract husband to a full-time, live-in chef. The easy, lazy days I'd envisioned were gone forever. One night, I was once again pulled away from a video game to make her a late-night meal. She sat at the dining table, eating with small, delicate bites, her posture so elegant she could have been in a movie. The warm light cast a soft glow on her beautiful profile, her long eyelashes creating tiny shadows on her cheeks. I sat next to her, scrolling through my phone, but my eyes kept drifting toward her. Watching her, my heart inexplicably sped up. Just then, her nose twitched slightly, and her perfect eyebrows furrowed. "Why do you have several different perfume scents on you?" She put down her fork, her gaze instantly turning sharp like two daggers. My stomach dropped. "I had a college reunion today," I answered honestly. "There were a few women there. I probably picked it up then." She fell silent. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Well, when you go out with other women, you need to be more careful," she said. Her voice was flat, but it held an unmistakable note of command. I was stunned. I asked instinctively, "Why? Do your parents care if I hang out with my friends?" Serafina's eyes flickered, as if she was hesitating. A few seconds later, she answered stiffly, "Yes, they could do." "Okay, I'll be more careful next time." I didn't think much of it, assuming her parents were just overly controlling. Another 6 months passed like this. Our fathers were content, but our mothers were growing frantic. Finally, they couldn't take it anymore and launched a full-scale invasion of the townhouse. The doorbell rang one afternoon, and I opened it to find my mom and her mom, each dragging a large suitcase, beaming at me with smiles that said resistance is futile. "Liam, honey, we talked it over and decided to move in for a while to take proper care of you too," my mom announced. Serafina's mother nodded in agreement. "Exactly. You young people are so busy with your careers. You need to look after your health. Especially you, Serafina. How is it that your belly is still so quiet?" Serafina and I exchanged a look. In each other's eyes, we saw the same word, doomed. They're moving and had one upside for me. I no longer had to cook. But the downsides came fast and hard. Since Serafina didn't come home for lunch, I had to drive across town to her office building to deliver the lovingly prepared lunch my mom had made. For Serafina, the downside was more immediate. That very first night, the two mothers conducted a tour of our living quarters. "Oh my goodness, why are you sleeping in separate rooms? This will not do," my mom exclaimed, her face a mask of shock. "She's right. How can a married couple sleep apart? How is the passion supposed to grow? When will we ever get our grandbabies?" Serafina's mother delivered the final verdict. "Starting tonight, you two are sleeping in the same bed." The command struck us both like a bolt of lightning. That night, after a long, hesitant shower, I walked into the master bedroom feeling like my blood had turned to ice. Serafina was already in bed, her back to me, occupying one half. I was so tense, I didn't know what to do with my limbs. I carefully lifted the covers and squeezed into the very edge of the bed, my body as stiff as a board. "Don't come any closer," her cold voice warned from the other side of the bed. I froze instantly, not daring to move an inch. The night air was a bit chilly, and between the cold and my nerves, I couldn't stop a slight shiver. In the darkness, she seemed to notice. "Are you cold?" She suddenly rolled over, and I could feel the warmth of her breath on my cheek. "Come over here a little. Can you not reach the blanket?" Before I could answer, a cool hand shot out and pressed firmly against my chest. I jumped, every hair on my body standing on end, but she was relentless, her tone laced with annoyance. "Why are you so stiff?" Her hand pressed harder, and her voice became an undeniable command. "I told you, get closer." I woke the next morning to a strange sensation of warmth and suffocation. Something heavy was pressing on my chest, and strands of hair were tickling my neck. I pried my eyes open and was met with a stunningly beautiful face, inches from my own. Serafina was curled up against me like an octopus, one arm and one leg thrown possessively over my body, her head resting on my arm. I was completely frozen. Almost at the exact moment I woke up, her long eyelashes fluttered, and her eyes shot open. We stared at each other. The air crackled. I could see my own dumbfounded reflection in her pupils. Whoosh! Her cheeks instantly turned a fiery red, and she shot away from me like a startled cat, fumbling to straighten her silk pajamas. "You?" She started to say something, but her lips just moved without a sound. She quickly regained her cool CEO composure, throwing off the covers and striding toward the bathroom without a backward glance. But the bright red tips of her ears betrayed her inner turmoil completely. Our mothers soon gave us a new mission. I was off cooking duty, but every day at noon, I had to drive the company's Rolls-Royce Cullinan to ignite innovations to deliver the love-filled lunch my mom had personally prepared. In their words, this was to deepen the marital bond and assert your wifely authority at the office. Driving that beast of a car, carrying a thermal lunchbox, I felt like the world's most conspicuous kept man. One afternoon, I pulled up to the curb outside Ignite's headquarters as usual, but as soon as I got out, I knew something was wrong. A large crowd had gathered at the entrance, surrounding a stark white banner. On it, bold black letters spelled out a single, devastating demand. "Give me back my daughter." A middle-aged woman was sitting on the ground, sobbing hysterically. I squeezed through the crowd and found a spot to listen in. I quickly learned that a young female employee, new to the company, had jumped from the building a few days ago. She had been battling depression, and the pressures of the new job had apparently been the final straw. In the center of the crowd, flanked by several bodyguards, was Serafina. She was trying to reason with the grieving mother. "Ma'am, the company will offer you the highest possible compensation, $1.2 million. Please accept our deepest condolences." Her voice was as calm as ever, almost clinical. "This incident, the primary cause was your daughter's pre-existing mental health condition. The company. Money. Money. That's all you people know." The mother shrieked, scrambling to her feet. Her eyes were bloodshot, her expression wild with grief. "My daughter's life cannot be bought with your money." "I know a life is priceless," Serafina said, still attempting to be rational. "But this money is to ensure your future." "I don't want a future. My daughter is gone. I don't want to live anymore." The mother's grief boiled over into rage. "You people killed her. You murderers all deserve to die." Before anyone could react, she lunged. From the folds of her coat, she pulled out a glittering fruit knife and thrust it wildly towards Serafina, who was only a few feet away. A collective gasp went through the crowd. The bodyguard were a step too slow, too far away to intervene. I, however, was standing right beside Serafina, there to deliver her lunch. My body moved before my brain could process it. It was pure instinct. I yanked Serafina behind me and shielded her with my own body, turning my back to meet the blade. Thwomp! A sharp, searing pain shot through my back, followed by a wave of warmth as my shirt became soaked with blood. I let out a choked grunt, my legs buckling beneath me. "Liam!" Serafina cried out from behind me, catching me as I fell. She rushed me to the hospital to get patched up. When we returned to the townhouse, my mom and her mom were still unaware of what had happened. Serafina came back with a bottle of antiseptic and some bandages. The doctor had said we could manage the dressing changes at home. I couldn't reach the wound myself. Luckily, that woman wasn't very strong. "It's not too deep," she said, her voice laced with a tremor of concern I'd never heard before. She dipped a cotton swab in iodine and began to gently clean the wound. The cold antiseptic on my raw skin made me flinch. She immediately stopped, looking up at me, her beautiful eyes filled with a swirling mix of guilt and a deep, aching tenderness. I don't know what happened, but the food our mothers cooked for us changed. Radically. Suddenly, our dinner table became a showcase for bizarre folk remedies. Breakfast was soy milk spiked with strange herbs and oyster congee. Lunch and dinner were even more intense. We had stir-fried lamb kidneys, venison blood tofu, and braised bull parts. The worst was the soup, a different horrifying concoction every day. One day, it was my mom's cistanche and chicken soup. The next, it was her mom's morinda root and Ukamiya bark black chicken brew. The smell alone was an assault. "Liam, dear, eat up. This is good for you," my mom would say with a cheerful smile, piling a heap of lamb onto my plate. "Yes, you need to build your strength back up," Serafina's mother would add, handing me a bowl of murky, black liquid, her eyes gleaming with expectation. I'd look down at the bowl of unidentifiable floating objects and feel my stomach turn. I'd shoot a desperate look at Serafina, only to see her being forced to drink the same vile soup by her own mother, her delicate brow furrowed in disgust. But there was no escape for either of us. Under the watchful, hopeful gazes of our mothers, I could only pinch my nose and swallow the stuff down like medicine. The effects of this demonic diet were immediate and potent. At night, lying in the same bed, I felt like a walking furnace. My blood seemed to be boiling, roaring through my veins. Serafina wasn't faring any better. She kept a good foot and a half of distance between us, but her breathing was hot and ragged. "Don't move," she'd hiss, her voice tight and trembling. "And don't you dare come any closer." It was pure torture. I wasn't moving a muscle, but the heat radiating from my body was a tidal wave, crashing against the shores of my self-control. In the darkness, I could hear her tossing and turning, the rustle of the sheets a constant, maddening sound. This was worse than sleeping in a freezer. The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely constricted. I opened my eyes to find Serafina completely wrapped around me, her head on my shoulder, one leg thrown possessively across my waist. We were tangled together like two pretzels, not an inch of space between us. She woke up, too. We stared at each other. The air froze. Boom! Her face went crimson. She shot away from me, frantically adjusting her pajamas, her eyes darting everywhere, but at me. This went on for some time. One day, some old college buddies invited me out for drinks. I made sure to clear it with Serafina beforehand. She just gave a cool, non-committal I stayed out until almost 11. The moment I walked through the door, I was ambushed by our two mothers in the foyer. "So you finally decided to come home," my mom said, hands on her hips, a look of profound disappointment on her face. "Always out gallivanting. Look at poor Serafina, all alone at home. She's very upset with you." I didn't really believe it. Serafina? Upset over something so trivial? I gave her mom some half-hearted excuses and let them force-feed me another bowl of that god-awful tonic soup. After my shower, I tiptoed into the bedroom. Serafina wasn't asleep yet. She was propped up against the headboard, reading something on her tablet. I had just settled into bed when she snapped the tablet shut. Her nose twitched as she sniffed the air around me, and her eyes went cold. "Why do you smell like perfume again?" "College reunion. There were some female friends there." I answered truthfully. She said nothing. The temperature in the room plummeted. I thought she was going to give me another warning about being careful. Instead, she delivered her decree in a voice as cold and final as a judge's gavel. "From now on, during work hours, you are forbidden from any private social engagements with your friends." I shot up in bed, staring at her in disbelief. "What does that mean? I can never go out again?" "I don't care," she stated, her eyes devoid of any room for negotiation. She was laying down the law. "If you want to go out, you must request permission from me, in person, and you will provide a full list of all attendees, including their names and genders." Her possessiveness was like an invisible net, snapping shut around me. I had completely lost my freedom. The mothers kept up their campaign for another month. When Serafina's belly remained resolutely flat, they probably decided their tactics weren't working. Our fathers finally managed to persuade them to go home. The moment I saw them off, I felt like I had woken from a nightmare. That night, I could finally sleep in my own room again. I collapsed onto my bed and let out a long, blissful sigh. But before I could drift off, my bedroom door creaked open. I was just about to sink into a deep, blissful sleep when my bedroom door clicked open. Serafina stood in the doorway, dressed in her silk robe, her face a mask of indifference. "I get cold easily," she stated, her voice unnervingly clear in the quiet night. "Without you next to me to generate heat, I find it hard to sleep." She didn't phrase it as a request. It was an order. "Come on, sleep with me." The excuse was so flimsy, I didn't even bother to challenge it. Days and half asleep, I was pulled out of my own bed and led back into hers. My head had barely hit the pillow before I was dead to the world. I didn't realize something was wrong until I woke up the next morning with one side of my body completely numb. Serafina was sprawled on top of me, using me as a giant human-sized teddy bear, sleeping peacefully. She woke up, her long lashes fluttering. There was no embarrassment, not even a hint of a blush. She simply and matter-of-factly climbed off me and delivered her next command in an unwavering tone. "You're awake. Go make breakfast." A pause. "From now on, you'll eat breakfast at home." My list of duties grew again. I was now her morning alarm clock and her nighttime personal heater. Had I been demoted from contract husband to a heater/full-time chef combo? As time went on, I started to forget our arrangement was fake. We'd bicker and joke around. She'd forget to grab a towel before her shower and come out wrapped in a tiny bath sheet, a flash of pale skin that made my head spin. Or she'd just call for me from the bathroom, asking me to hand one in. She did it so naturally that I, the guy, was the one who ended up flustered. At night, she'd lie in my arms, holding her phone up for me to see. "Look at this one, it's hilarious." Her warm breath on my ear would make my skin tingle and my heart race. I started to have this illusion that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't so bad. That illusion shattered when I wanted to go out with a few of my guy friends. I went to the mall and bought her a necklace as a peace offering, then gingerly asked for leave. She didn't even glance at the gift box. She just uttered a single cold word. "No." I was floored. "But it's just guys. We're just grabbing a beer." "No." I tried another 7 or 8 times, using every excuse I could think of. Her answer was always the same. Cold, firm, absolute. That's when it hit me. She wasn't afraid of me cheating with another woman. She simply wouldn't allow me to have any social life that was outside of her control. A storm of anger brewed inside me. I decided to sneak out. But when I got to the bar, my heart sank. What was supposed to be a guy's night had turned into a couple's night. Every single one of them had brought their girlfriend. "Liam, you've been studying too hard, man. Still single after all this time." One of my drunker friends slurred, clapping me on the back. "Don't worry, I got you. Let's get you some practice." Before I could protest, They shoved me into a private karaoke room. Two scantily clad women were pushed into my lap, one on each side. The overwhelming stench of cheap perfume and alcohol enveloped me. I'm so dead. That was the only thought in my head. There was no explaining my way out of this one. I was sunk. My head was pounding. Stinking of stale booze and a cocktail of cheap perfumes, I staggered into the townhouse. Dead. The word tolled like a funeral bell in my mind. The living room was dark, save for a single, dim floor lamp. And sitting on a sofa, perfectly still like a flawless sculpture, was Serafina, waiting. I couldn't even make out her expression, but the Arctic chill radiating from her was enough to freeze the air in the entire house. It was a college thing. Had a bit too much to drink, I stammered, my tongue thick and clumsy. She didn't speak. She rose from the sofa and glided toward me, the click of her heels on the hardwood floor echoing my own frantic heartbeat. She stopped in front of me, her beautiful eyes empty of all emotion. She leaned in, her nose twitching delicately as she sniffed me, like a predator inspecting its prey. My heart leaped into my throat. Her gaze fell to the collar of my shirt. Then, with two slender fingers, she plucked something from the fabric. A single, long strand of brown-dyed hair. A hair that was not hers. She held it up between her fingers, the evidence damningly clear in the dim light. The world stopped. You went out whoring around again, didn't you? Her voice was a whisper, but it was laced with a poison that stabbed straight into my ears. You found another woman. No, it's a misunderstanding. They just... My explanations were pathetic and useless against the cold, rising madness in her eyes. She wasn't listening. She snatched her phone, dialed a number. Lock every door and window leading outside. From the exterior, she issued the order, then hung up and ripped my phone from my pocket. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a terrifying, possessive fire I had never seen before. Starting tomorrow, you're not even leaving this house. Click. The heavy thud of the front door being bolted from the outside sealed my fate. It was the sound that cut off my final escape route. For the first time, a true, bone-deep fear washed over me. I woke the next day to a splitting headache and a crushing sense of despair. I was under house arrest. The massive townhouse was as silent as a tomb, every window with a view of the outside world locked tight. I was a caged animal, pacing restlessly back and forth in the living room. My anger and frustration were so overwhelming, I didn't even have the energy to change my clothes or shower. That evening, the sound of a key in the lock announced Serafina's return. She didn't even look at me as she walked straight over. Without a word, she began patting me down, sniffing my clothes like a corrections officer searching for contraband. My blood ran cold. Of course, because I hadn't changed, the faint, lingering scent of perfume was still on my clothes. And to make matters infinitely worse, she found a second, identical strand of long, brown hair tangled in the wool of my sweater. She laughed. It was a horrible, broken sound, full of the crazed fury of someone whose worst fears had just been confirmed. You've gotten bold, she said, her eyes locked on mine, spitting each word out like a shard of glass. I lock you in the house, and you still find a way to cheat. I didn't. I haven't left this house all day. I screamed, my voice raw with desperation. But she was beyond reason. Fine, she announced coldly, her eyes glinting with a dangerous light. I'll hire a live-in maid. From now on, you won't even be allowed to leave my bedroom. Her bodyguard grabbed my wrist, his grip like iron, and brutally dragged me up the stairs, shoving me into her bedroom. Slam! The door was thrown shut, and then I heard the sound that shattered my last sliver of hope. A key slid into the lock, turned, and clicked. I was locked in. The once luxurious, welcoming bedroom was now a gilded prison. A stoic, middle-aged maid appeared only at designated times. She would bring in a tray with a bowl of food, set it down, and leave without a word, quickly locking the door from the outside behind her. I sat on the obscenely soft bed, staring at the bowl of food, my stomach churning. Imprisoned and isolated, I finally saw the situation with absolute clarity. Serafina's love had twisted into a monstrous, terrifying chain. She wasn't just throwing a tantrum, she was genuinely unwell. Fighting her head-on would only provoke a more extreme reaction. I looked at the locked door, the fear in my heart slowly solidifying into a cold, hard will to survive. I had to escape, but first, I had to lull the lioness to sleep with gentleness and submission. That night, when the lock turned again, I didn't cower in the corner. I sat on the edge of the bed, as if I had been waiting for her. Serafina entered, her eyes still cold and searching. She scanned me habitually, like an owner checking on their property. Before she could speak, I stood up and walked toward her, forcing a placating smile onto my face. You're home. You must be exhausted. She froze, clearly taken aback by my 180-degree shift in attitude. I didn't give her time to process it. I moved behind her and, hesitating only for a second, placed my hands on her shoulders. Her body went rigid. I saw how hard you work every day, so I looked up some massage techniques. Let me help you relax. My voice was laced with a sycophantic sweetness that made my own skin crawl. She didn't push me away. It was a good sign. A cold smile formed in my mind, but the pressure from my hands remained gentle. I leaned in, whispering the most nauseatingly sweet things I could think of into her ear. Don't work so hard anymore. It makes my heart ache to see you so tired. When she held me as we slept, I was no longer a lifeless log. I even started to proactively, if clumsily, massage her legs and whisper reassurances to help her fall asleep. My pride, my dignity, they were worthless in the face of her paranoid obsession. If I wanted freedom, I first had to become her most obedient pet. My act worked. Serafina's mood visibly stabilized. The lioness, always on edge, began to calm down, the sharp, aggressive glint in her eyes softening. She started to enjoy my subservience, reveling in the feeling of having me completely under her thumb. This went on for nearly 2 months. One morning, after she got up, she left the bedroom without locking the door behind her. I stood by the door, staring at the unlocked handle, my heart pounding. I had done it. This was the first step. I had earned the right to move freely within the townhouse again. Another month passed. I stood by the window, a carefully crafted look of melancholy on my face. Serafina, I feel like I'm going to grow a mold, I said that night, my voice muffled as I held her. If I don't get some fresh air soon, I think I'm going to get sick. The hand stroking my hair paused. I pressed my advantage. I'll just walk around the neighborhood. You can have the maid follow me. I promise I won't go anywhere, okay? She was silent for a long time. So long I thought she was going to say no. Fine, she finally said, but she's not to leave your side for a second. My opportunity came faster than I could have imagined. A rich kid named Landon Reed pulled up to the front gate in a flashy red Ferrari, blocking the driveway. He was one of the admirers Serafina had mentioned. Well, if it isn't the great Liam Miller, he drawled, leaning against his car and looking me up and down with open contempt. What are you, some kind of kept housewife locked up in here? Come on, I'll take you out for a spin. The maid behind me immediately reached for her phone to report to Serafina. An idea sparked. I subtly put my hand over hers. Ma'am, please don't. I shook my head, feigning embarrassment. Mr. Reed is a friend of Serafina's. He's just joking around. If you call her, it'll just make me look petty. The maid hesitated, then lowered her phone. I turned back to Landon, forcing a timid smile. Mr. Reed, you're too kind. Let me just let Serafina know. I used the house landline to make a fake call to Serafina, my voice filled with manufactured fear and helplessness. Serafina, Mr. Reed is here. He's insisting I go out with him. I don't want to, but I don't want to embarrass you. I pretended to hang up. Landon Reed, you magnificent bastard. You're my savior. With the maid in tow, I got into Landon's car. He didn't drive into the city. Instead, he headed straight for the coast. A massive, gleaming white luxury yacht was docked at the marina. Landon led me off the car, and several of his burly bodyguards immediately stepped forward to block the maid from following. Mr. Reed's invitation was for Mr. Miller only, one of them said, his face a stony mask. Everyone else waits on the shore. The maid started to protest, but 2 of the bodyguards physically barred her way. I glanced back at her one last time, a triumphant smile hidden deep inside. The moment my feet hit the yacht's deck, the ground swaying gently beneath me, Landon Reed's phony smile vanished. He dropped the act entirely. Several more large bodyguards emerged from the cabin, joining the others to surround me, cutting off any chance of escape. He strode toward me, his eyes burning with jealousy and resentment, and sized me up with a sneer. The woman I couldn't have, you got. I think you owe me a little something for that. I laughed coldly to myself, but on the outside, I put on a show of terror and confusion. Landon, what are you doing? Does Serafina know about this? As I spoke, I backed away in feigned panic, my feet unsteady, deliberately moving step by step toward the railing at the edge of the yacht. It was the perfect spot. The wind, the waves, the angle, everything was just right. Oh, you. Landon scoffed, as if I'd told the world's funniest joke. The price is a little pain, a little lesson in remembering your place. Get him. A bodyguard's fist, the size of a cinder block, came flying toward my face. This is it. I didn't dodge. I didn't even blink. The instant before the punch connected, I used its momentum, throwing my body backward with a dramatic, exaggerated scream. Arg! Like a leaf torn from a branch, I sailed over the railing in a perfect accidental arc and plunged into the churning sea. To Landon and his idiotic goons, it would look like I was knocked out by the punch and stumbled overboard. Splash! The frigid, biting water swallowed me whole. The immense pressure squeezed me from all sides, threatening to crush my lungs. I didn't struggle. I let my body sink. Deep beneath the surface, hidden from their view, I opened my eyes to a murky, blue-green world. Moving as fast as I could, I held my breath and began to shed every piece of incriminating evidence. The expensive jacket, the shoes on my feet, and the phone in my pocket, the phone that belonged to Liam Miller. I let them sink one by one into the darker, deeper water. They would be the proof of my drowning. The air in my lungs was nearly gone, a burning pain spreading through my chest. Relying on the swimming skills I'd honed in college, I moved like a fish, kicking desperately away from the yacht underwater. I surfaced a few times, briefly and silently, to snatch a breath, making sure no one had seen me before diving back down. Finally, my hands brushed against the slick, rough surface of a rock. With my last ounce of strength, I scrambled out of the water onto a secluded cluster of rocks. I was soaked to the bone, colder than I'd ever been, but I was alive. Not far away, an old man in a straw hat was fishing from the shore. I staggered toward him, my lips nearly frozen shut. "Sir, I managed to choke out. Can I? Please, use your phone." The call connected. On the other end was the voice of the one person I trusted besides Caleb. My friend, Leo. "Hello. Who is this?" "It's me, Liam." My voice was a raw, unrecognizable rasp from the cold and exhaustion. "I'm in trouble. I need your help. Now. Right now." There was a moment of silence on the other end, followed by Leo's sharp intake of breath. "Where are you?" The news of my disappearance hit the city like a bomb, and Serafina detonated. Everyone, friends, family, they all thought I was dead. "I'm not dead," I said, my voice like sandpaper as I scrolled through the news on Leo's phone. "I just escaped." Leo sighed, clapping me on my soaked shoulder. "I know, man. I know. But to the rest of the world, you're gone." He told me everything. Serafina had gone nuclear. She had called in every favor she had, deploying dozens of search and rescue boats to scour the ocean in a grid pattern. She had stormed into the Reed family estate and slapped Landon across the face in front of everyone. Her beautiful eyes shot through with blood vessels, looking like she wanted to tear him apart. But Landon stuck to his story. I had accidentally fallen. The Reed family's influence was vast, and they quickly shut down the police investigation. The incident was officially ruled a tragic accident. The nail in the coffin was the weather forecast for the next day. A massive storm was rolling in over the ocean. The search mission turned into a recovery mission. They were no longer looking for a living person. They were looking for a body. The moment that storm hit, Serafina's world collapsed. She held a funeral for me. A lavish, grandiose affair for a guest of honor who wasn't there. I had Leo go in my place. "Make it look real," I told him. "Don't screw it up." When Leo came back, his eyes were red. He didn't say anything. He just handed me his phone. The video showed a sea of black. Everyone was in formal attire, their faces grim. In the center of the crowd was a large, black and white portrait of me, smiling brightly. And in front of the photo stood a woman in a black dress, her frame so thin she looked like a breath of wind could carry her away. It was Serafina. She was clutching my portrait, motionless, like a marionette with its strings cut. In the video, my parents were sobbing, so, overcome with grief, they had to be held up. But the most shocking sight was Serafina, the queen, the woman who was always so high and mighty, so icily composed, was crying like a child who had been abandoned by the entire world. Her makeup was ruined, tears streaming down her face in endless rivers, splashing onto the glass of my portrait in her arms. The scene was pure chaos. My own heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand, a dull, heavy ache. Jesus, did this fake marriage actually make her fall for me for real? Watching her despair, I didn't feel a shred of the joy of escape. Instead, a chilling dread crept up my spine. If she ever found out I was alive, she wouldn't just be possessive anymore. She'd become something far, far worse. And my fate would be 1,000 times more horrible than drowning in the sea. The video ended on my parents. Seeing them, white-haired and broken, mourning their only son, felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I couldn't take it. I grabbed the burner phone Leo had gotten me and dialed my father's number. It rang for a long time before he picked up. His voice was old and hollow, thick with the grief he was trying to suppress. "Hello, Dad," I said, using all my strength to keep my voice from shaking. "I'm okay. I need a divorce. Don't tell anyone. I'll explain everything later." I hung up immediately, unable to bear hearing his voice for another second. Leo sent me a few photos from the funeral. In one, my father was holding his phone. His shoulders were still slumped in sorrow, but the soul-crushing despair in his eyes was gone. After the call, Serafina's parents were consoling him. Serafina walked over too. She placed a hand on my father's arm, her voice hoarse. "Dad, please, try to be strong." My father shook his head, his voice tinged with the relief of a man pulled back from the brink. "It's okay. I'm just so sad. I think I've cried all my tears out." It was that one sentence. In the photo, Serafina's movement had stopped. She was slowly lifting her head to look at my father. And in that instant, in those red-rimmed, swollen eyes, all the grief, the vulnerability, the despair, it all vanished, receding like a tidal wave. In its place was a dead, cold, razor-sharp scrutiny. She didn't say a word, but that look seemed to pierce through every lie, to travel through the phone screen and pin me to the wall where I stood. That look said one thing: "You're lying to me."